Hello, this is Bryceton LeFlore. Welcome to the Tennis Journal podcast. The following is a conversation with former professional tennis player and inner game peak performance coach Sean Brawley. Sean Brawley is one of the foremost experts on accelerated learning, innovative coaching, and sustainable high performance. Sean has worked with organizations such as the New York Yankees and assisted Pete Carroll at the USC Trojans Football team to foster peak performance by using inner game principles. In today's interview, we will talk about how to apply the inner game to peak athletic performance.
How could you implement the inner game in match performance? If you're in a calm, present, peaceful state, I think that's extremely important, especially when you're in your matches, especially when things like your expectations about the situation come in. So I was just wondering, in your match, how would you use the inner game? Like one thing that I do is I say bounce hit, during my points, and and da 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 when I serve, and that's helped me immensely. But I just want to see your view of that.
One of the main things is what is another problem with players and coaches is um, we don't actually control. We haven't learned how to manage our states very well. So our state of being is the foundation for competitive performance. And as I've mentioned earlier, if you're relaxed and focused, if that's your state, that's an optimal state, but we don't control it. So like I've had matches where I've been playing in the finals and there's, $2,000 on the line and, big difference in ATP points. And I've been highly confident and for whatever reason very loose and played a great match. And I've had other matches first round playing a nobody, struggling and not playing very well at all. So there's a spectrum. Everyone experiences variability in their states of being and their performance, and that's number one. You have to understand that's going to happen. The reason why that's important to realize that that's a fact and that we don't control our state 100%, because you can show up and all of a sudden you're nervous and you can barely breathe and your hands are sweating. Sorry, you didn't want that to happen and you didn't control it. It came up for some hidden reason. You probably aren't going to find that reason in that moment. So then the question is, well, because if you're in an optimal state, you don't really have to do, I mean, it takes care of itself. The question is, what do you do when you're not? And this is where, inner game focuses quite a lot because it's 50 years old on focusing attention. But Tim talks a little bit about being relaxed, but he doesn't go into the whole body stuff. So the second thing that I would tell players is that since this is a possibility, you have to have a plan for it. How are you going to manage your thinking? How are you going to manage your body and your state? And so the first is just to recognize that this is actually normal, because
Mhm.
people think that they don't feel in control because it's not what they want and it's happening to them. They see it as happening to them. It feels abnormal. So the first thing to make sure the player is aware of is, in competition, this is pretty normal that this can happen. It's normal. Just it's that. And so the first step is don't compound the problem by not wanting to experience what is actually really happening. So if we reject our current experience, if we think, oh no, this is bad timing and this shouldn't be happening now, sorry, it is. And it's very normal in competitive, performance situations. So that's the first thing. This is very normal. Second thing is, well, now, okay, you don't exacerbate it. What do you do about it? So the most important thing is to know that you're perceiving some kind of threat. That is what's going on. You may have an over-attachment to the outcome. You may want to win so badly that, everything inside is just tightened up in a knot. So a helpful thing is to just welcome what is happening. I know this sounds almost absurd, but basically allow what is happening. So for instance, Tiger Woods' father said, and there's a lot of sports psychologists who said we shouldn't get angry. Don't get angry out there because anger really interferes with your performance and your, state of being. And that's not true at all. That's like the old method. Tiger Woods' father said, it's totally okay to be angry. That's very normal. Like if you just missed a 3-foot putt to go ahead and, you flubbed it, like, of course you're going to be angry. That's a pretty natural response to like messing up. Just be angry for 10 steps though. And after you've taken your 10th step, adjust your cap so that it's time to let the anger go. So these are things you can practice, in practice. And his father used to dangle keys, and when he'd get upset, they would work on, well, how long are you going to be angry for? The other thing that you can do, so the first thing is what's happening is normal. Second is to realize that you may not be able to control everything that's happening, but you have some control. So control what you can control, which is your breathing, which is your posture, because and then there's little tricks too. So for instance, the inner game kind of it used more of the focus of attention. So like you said, bounce hit. The problem is, Bryceton, is like if you practice bounce hit in practice, it'll be much easier for you to transfer that skill and say bounce hit, which is, focusing on the ball in a competitive situation. But if a player or an athlete hasn't done that, it's nearly impossible. That's not how it works. It's hard to focus your attention on something and keep it there when you're really nervous. I know from my own experience. I mean, 20 years of doing inner game, nervous playing a match or singing in a recital. Sometimes you just have to deal with it and recognize that it's not going to be your best performance, but it's okay. This is pretty normal. This is what Jim Lear used to say, love the battle. That's part of what recognize that this is normal and part of battling and love it.
Okay, yeah. So I guess it sounds like it's all about just acceptance of the situation when you're out there.
That's a big issue. Feel all the feelings, welcome everything that's arising, accept it. And, another thing you can do is just get into the present moment, because usually when we're nervous, it's about the future. Almost always it's about we're afraid that we're going to lose the point, the game, the match, the set. So like if you just take in between points, this is what's great about tennis is we have in between points. We have lots of in between time. If you just tickle the palm of your hand, it's a pleasurable feeling. Tickle the palm of your hand right now, Bryson. Just
Okay.
notice how pleasurable that is. It's really difficult. The body doesn't know quite what to do when you're saying to it, I'm okay. I'm okay enough to tickle the palm of my hand and create this pleasurable feeling. And then there's this other part that's worried about winning and losing. And it starts like going, oh, wait a second. And then the body starts to relax. Another thing is wiggle your toes. When you're like getting ready to, return serve or to serve, just wiggle your toes. In that moment that you tickle your palm, wiggle your toes, you're in the present moment now. And in that moment, the nervousness starts to dissipate often, not always, but often.
Okay, and I mean, and just to build off of that a little bit, so I think what defines an athlete is being able to perform their best in the biggest moments. You think about some of the best athletes we think of. In my mind, Novak Djokovic is extremely well in the biggest moments, and another athlete is Tom Brady. So I was wondering what the inner game approach would say about getting the best out of yourself when it counts the most.
Performing optimally is performing optimally. It's doesn't matter. Inner game doesn't. It, it's always going to be the same. If you in a big moment. So here I'll mess with you a little bit. Okay. Pete Carroll used to say there are no big moments. When they would play UCLA, he'd say, "This isn't a big game."
Uh-huh.
Now, let me ask you this. Is the rivalry between USC and UCLA real?
It's all kind of in our head, I guess. It's created.
Pete Carroll was often asked by the volleyball coach and the tennis coach to come out and give a pep talk against when they were playing against UCLA because it was the big match.
Uh-huh.
And he would tell them, it's not a big match, you guys. It's just another match. Do you trust your training? Have you been training well? Do you trust it? Because that's what you've got to trust in when you play the match you're playing. But this match is no bigger, no smaller than any match. And the reason he would say that is mentally. He's one of the most competitive coaches I've ever met in my life. And he would constantly tell the team, play normal. Don't try to play your best. Don't try hard to play your best. This is not a big game. It's a normal game. Trust your training. You've practiced great. We've done all the plays. Trust it. Do what you do in training and trust that that's enough. And the reason is because everyone gets in their own way. We know the answer. Cut down your unforced errors. And that's true in football and it's true in tennis. And if you think it's a big moment, then there's a good chance that you'll be nervous. But if this isn't a big moment, if it's just one of many moments, now there are a handful of people like Michael Jordan. They're just built differently. They're not a normal person, on a big moment that we would all go, well, this is big. Next basket wins. That's pretty big. He wanted the ball. That's different. That's like a total different, you can't really train that. That's in a player's DNA, an athlete's DNA. But I hope that my answer helps to shape that embedded in your question is essentially what the problem is, which is, you know, there's no real big moments.
I definitely can understand that. Yeah, it's almost like not making the moment so big and just sticking to what you know. So the next question I was wondering is everybody has a different gauge. So some players their goal might be just to win a local tournament. Some might be to go pro. Who knows? But you are a player that has a high level of achievement in tennis. I think you played some professional tennis.
Yeah, I was ranked in the top 150 in the world in singles and doubles and got to play in the Grand Slam. So yeah, I played at a high level.
Yeah, and so I mean that is an incredible for most players. That's an incredible level of achievement. So I'm wondering how if the inner game talks about sort of presence, lack of judgment, acceptance of the situation, awareness. These all kind of things, all these things seem like it's opposite to ambition, and it seems like if to reach those heights, you would need a high level of ambition. So I was wondering, how can the inner game work with ambition?
I think it might have been helpful. Why don't you tell me what your understanding of the inner game is, whatever that might be?
So I understand the inner game as a sort of I've studied Eastern religion a lot. It seems like sort of a Eastern religion approach to sports, and especially specifically tennis. So um
But again, what does that mean? Like that doesn't help me under what your understanding is. Let's assume that I haven't studied the Eastern philosophies. Tim never did, so he would never say that his approach was like a Zen approach. Other people would say that, but he wouldn't. But in just the essence of inner game itself, if you actually look at what he says in the book, and what it's actually about, would you say the top two or three principles of the inner game are?
um I would say from my perspective is I thought it was really interesting what they talked about um you're imagine like you're a surfer overcoming a wave, and that inspired me to not necessarily think about the results so much and just focus on building myself through tennis and the art form that is tennis, and just loving what tennis is and learning with it, and also just the being in the present moment when I'm on court and just in life in general. Those are my two biggest takeaways.
Well, so here's what's coming up for me now is maybe this is an opportunity for me to just give you a summary of what I think the inner game is that might help people who aren't familiar with it. So the inner game basically says there's in anything we do, anything, relationships, tennis, football, doesn't matter what it is. There's two games going on. There's an inner game, the iceberg, everything that's below the level of the water. And there's an outer game in tennis. There's a net, there's an opponent, there's wind, there's sun. All of these things have an impact. Does a court have wind screens or no wind screens? I mean, can we see? All of these things, there are outer obstacles, but there are inner obstacles. And we're all familiar with that. We're all familiar with these inner obstacles, fear, doubt, self-judgment, losing our focus, like really struggling just to stay in the present and focus on what we're doing, beating ourselves up, hitting a shot into the net and then yelling at ourselves that, what an idiot we are. Um, Everyone is familiar with that. And so if we want to like take a look at that a little, go a little deeper, then Tim suggests taking a look at the voice inside, that everybody has this voice inside. And he is one of the very first people to bring attention to our self-talk. Now, very common, that whole idea of pay attention to your self-talk. It's one of the main things of sports psychology. But if we look at it just as an objective witness, if we look at our self-talk, what we see is, wow, there's a lot going on. Number one, lots of thinking going on, just generated, like it's a thought-producing machine. Two, it's mostly negative. Most of what we think is actually beating ourselves up or judging or criticizing ourselves. It also might be telling ourselves what to do because there's a lack of trust. We have a lot of self-doubt. And when we are insecure and we doubt ourselves, then our ego then wants to control. Now, we could go even further into that, but basically what the inner game is the very first kind of book out there that said we all get in our own way. And if we can learn to play the inner game well, meaning to reduce the self-interference, that will have impact on our learning, on our performance, and importantly, our enjoyment of what we're doing. And
Uh,
so that's what it proposes. It proposes an approach that helps people develop their potential and to reduce the interference. And what he did was he personified the interference with what he called self one. It's basically the interfering self. and self two, which is the part of us, the mind and the body that is full of potential and hasn't been fully realized yet. And so, and there was even a formula, potential minus performance equals potential minus interference. So whatever your potential right now, Bryson, as a player, as a tennis coach, you have certain skills right now in this moment. Now, your talent and skills can be developed over time. But right now in this moment, you have whatever skills you've developed. Now, if you reduce the interference down to zero, we'd be talking about you coaching or playing in a flow state, in an optimal performance state. If there's zero interference, it would just be flow. Now, it can go from as simple as trying to tell ourselves how to hit a ball, like, oh, and I need to step in, or racket back needs to get up and higher and all that. But we know from research that thinking about our physical movements and behaviors interferes. So that's one of the ways to interfere. And so Inner Game came along and said, if we can quiet the mind, we'll learn and perform better. Very simple. Quiet the mind, and we'll learn and perform better. And so that is pretty much it. And there's certain things you can do. And there's you can help a player be clear on their choices. So everybody has different choices. Like you said, I'm going to work differently with an athlete who comes and says, I want to make my high school team versus one that says, I want to win a national championship and get a scholarship in college. Totally different approach that I'll take with them. They'll have to have clear understanding of what's required to achieve their goal. But, how many times they can play during the week is important. I mean, all this stuff becomes factors, but the inner game, basically is about rediscovering how to learn from our own experience, and learning how, from our own experience, how the mind impacts our learning, performance, and enjoyment of what we're doing.
Uh-huh. And I appreciate what you said to clarify the inner game. But just to bring it back to the question. So for instance, uh, so let's say you want to win a national championship. So in that situation, you would need at least some desire to win. You would need some focus on like the result that you're having. You would probably need, if you're trying to be a competitive athlete, there has to be probably at least some desire. Maybe you're not focusing on that, on the forefront, but probably has to be some desire to dominate your opponent or beat your opponent. So what I'm wondering is, how would you reconcile these desires with the inner game?
I don't have to reconcile it. Why do I have to reconcile it? What's wrong with a desire and ambition?
Because isn't that what the inner game is saying not to do? For instance, if you're in a match.
No, it never says that at all. Never says that in any of the inner game books. It never says anything about you really shouldn't want this.
Well, I mean, for instance, you shouldn't try to win, for example.
Yeah, you shouldn't. I have to tell you, Bryceton, if you try to win, you're going to have a really tough time out there. What I recommend is the Yoda approach. Try not, do. Just win. But don't try hard, because if you think it's a big match and you think that this is a must-win situation, you will try hard and you will tighten your muscles, and that will cause you to perform less than optimally. It's okay to want to win, just don't try hard, and just don't over care. Don't be overly attached. But a desire to win is that's what drives, all athletes to do what they're doing, is they want to be great they want excellence. They want to win. They want to win a gold medal. Fantastic. That's part of the inner game. How do you fan that? How do you get in touch with that desire? How do you fan the flame? How do you not become overly attached where it becomes so important that you're tight? Look at, I set goals. I wanted to be in the top 200. And when I got ranked in the top 200, I set a goal for the top 150. When I was playing in the finals of the Masters for a satellite, which in those days was, the fifth week, the fifth tournament, the fifth week. And if I won this match, I knew I would win the satellite and I would become ranked in the top 150 in the world. So I didn't sleep very well the night before the match. I couldn't even sleep. I was so excited and anxious and keyed up. I had so much energy that I couldn't go to bed. Now, let me ask you a question. Was that helpful?
Of course not. Yes.
Of course not. But the next day, man, I really wanted to win, but I wasn't overly attached. And even though I didn't sleep well, I was alert and focused and relaxed, and I won the match.
Okay.
I'll give you one final, it may sound like a paradox. I give technical instruction sometimes. The inner game doesn't ever even say to not do that. But if I use the inner game approach and facilitate awareness and use a guided discovery approach, and I see that it is most effective 99% of the time, I'm going to use it. That's what the inner game says. Use the most effective approach possible. Now, if I give instruction to some players, I can see it firsthand how it interferes. I can see it. They get tight, they start trying to control their body, and it doesn't work. But sometimes it's helpful. And I've learned when that is. And I've learned how to give the instruction in what could be called an inner game way, so that it reduces the interference that is possible by giving the instruction.
Okay. Okay. And so I think maybe it's more of of a of a framework or a philosophy than like a set rule. So for instance, you should be you it's you a guided discovery approach rather than like it has to be a guided approach discovery approach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't right now in the revised edition, there's a whole chapter on how to give instructions with awareness so that you're doing both. If as a coach you see, oh, they're taking the racket back too high. Oh, well, here's an awareness instruction that can help the player become aware of what they're doing specifically to this technical change that you want to make. And by coupling it with awareness, should go better than if you don't.
Okay. So now I really I really I love what you said about you know it works perfectly with ambition, but it's just sort of not letting your ambition run away with you, so to speak. It's sort of it's about winning, but you don't try to win, you just win. I love it.
Well, another perfect example is we're told not to get angry, but McEnroe used his anger in a way that really truly helped him.
uh-huh. So I was wondering, for instance, what it I guess it's easier said than done, for instance. So maybe what would be some ways that you could help yourself to actually put this into practice?
But what into practice?
Like how you can look at your goals and your ambition without being attached to it.
Yeah, you just have to do it, and you have to learn, what does it feel like. So first of all, the attachment shows up in the competition arena. Like if we're sitting down at a table, you're not going to get all tied up in knots because of your ambition. You're just going to be ambitious. So the answer to the inner game is always, the first step is like almost always the same. Be aware, non-judgmentally, of what's going on. And that means, back to what you said, is acceptance. Be aware like a witness, as a witness. So if you can become the witness, then you've done the first step in separating, because if you think I am nervous, then you're identifying with the experience of being nervous. But if you can be the witness and go, oh, wow, my nerves, I have nerves, there's nerves going on. I'm not, you wouldn't, it's a slight shift, but instead of saying, I am angry, I'm experiencing anger. It's a little bit of a separation. So, this is one of the problems. And Tim talks about identity, like self-image. And this is kind of very seldom talked about in sports psychology and the mental game, but it is the final obstacle, like our ego, our self-image. And, that's where some of the interference comes from, and how we identify with certain things. So by using non-judgmental awareness, that's the first step, which separates us from what's happening and puts us in a witness state, which is much closer to who we really are versus the player, the person that is nervous or angry or frustrated or doubting themselves. And then if you can accept it, and then there's a whole sequence of practice, and it takes sometimes years. First step is to separate and be a witness. Second is to accept what's happening. This is normal. Wow, okay. This isn't anything abnormal that's going on. I'm a normal human being. Like, it's okay what's happening. Next stage is to learn how to even welcome what's happening. Wow, I must really care a lot about this because I'm really nervous and I must really want to win very badly. That's okay. Welcome. Wow. Another possible approach is, wow, I'm really nervous. I'm going to learn today how to deal with my nerves, which is going to happen again. So whatever I can learn today could be helpful. Then to not just welcome it, but to embrace it. Learn how to embrace what is happening. And then the final step is reverence. Can we possibly take what's happening, even though it might be painful, it might be frustrating, it might be agonizing even, we might be suffering quite a bit, and somehow revere it as being, as part of being a human and being alive. It's possible. It takes a lot of work, takes a long time. You mentioned Eastern religion, that's what the Buddhist monks. And so, if I left you, because we're going to run out of time soon, if I left you with one thing that has been very, very helpful for me, is that somebody can do, and they don't even have to be on the tennis court. It has a huge impact on one's ability to become more aware of the inner game, more aware of the mind, and more aware of how to deal with the different states, is meditate. Meditate every morning upon waking up, at least 10 minutes, hopefully 20. Just sit comfortably, follow the breath. Just keep focused with the breath. And what you're practicing then is you're practicing how to be relaxed and focused. Over time, it has an impact on your central nervous system. Your central nervous system starts to calm down. And a lot of what the inner game is external object meditations.
External, so essentially you're meditating on a.
Yeah. So while you sit and meditate on your breath, that's internal. That's an internal state, because our breathing is crucial for our state. If our breathing is relaxed and calm and our state is calm. And when we are nervous and our state is agitated, we breathe shallow in our chest and not in our belly, and we breathe quickly. So one thing that we can control is our breathing. And so when you practice meditating, and more athletes, have embraced um, meditation, and they found that it's quite helpful in learning how to quiet the mind and quiet the body. And then what I said was that, like, when you focus attention on the tennis ball and the spin and the speed and the bounce and the hit, or you focus on balance, that's essentially it can become a meditation.
Uh-huh.
Another wonderful meditative exercise for athletes, especially tennis players, is focus on rhythm. That's something that's hardly ever done. But if you focus on the rhythm of the serve or focus on the rhythm of how you hit the ball, rhythm is always there as part of the movement. We just don't feel it because we're usually focusing on lots of other stuff. But if you take rhythm as an object of attention and focus on it, what you focus on grows. And so your rhythm grows. So if you were practicing your serve and you focus on the rhythm of your serve, the rhythm of your serve starts to expand and grow. And all of a sudden you feel more and more rhythmical. And as you feel more and more rhythmical on the serve, it has an impact on your ball toss, and it has impact on your contact. And these are all things that can be very helpful that have nothing to do with giving a technical instruction.
Okay. Well, yeah, yeah. And I think it's very interesting given how that talk started. We ended up at meditation, and I think tennis for me is kind of a meditation, and I do practice meditation and see the really profound benefits of it. And one reason that I coach is the biggest reason is to help my students grow internally. So yeah, so I think that's a really good stopping point. Is there anything else that you think would be valuable to share?
Nope, I think we have only 2 more minutes, so before I
Okay,
cut.
just yeah, just if you have any final thoughts. But
No, I
okay,
don't. Just the 50th anniversary. I highly recommend that you reread the book and keep experimenting. Basically, that's what Tim did for me. Is I just rediscovered how to learn from my students the inner game approach, and it every time you're having a lesson with a student is an opportunity for you to learn the inner game.
okay, great, great. Yes, and I'm 100% with you. Love the talk, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and it was
You're
really
welcome.
inspiring to have somebody like you with the playing, prestige that you have come on the channel. So
Thank you. Thank you for your invitation.
yes, okay. So for everybody out there watching, this has been Bryceton LeFlore and Sean Brawley with another tennis improvement video. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, great luck out there on the tennis court. Thank you. See you.
All righty.